The asphalt ribbon of I-10 spooled before me, a shimmering black line drawn across the vast, sun-bleached canvas of West Texas. For 2 days, the deep, familiar rumble of my Kenworth T680 had been my only constant companion, a guttural lullaby that vibrated through the soles of my boots and up into my very bones. I was hauling a load of consumer electronics from a distribution center in Phoenix, the anonymous boxes in my trailer destined for the bustling metropolis of Houston. It was a routine run, one of many I'd made over 15 years of living my life in the driver's seat. This life, this nomadic existence, is a peculiar one. You become a connoisseur of sunrises and sunsets, a critic of truck stop coffee, and a silent observer of the country's ever-changing face. You see the real America, the one that exists between the glossy pages of travel magazines. You witness the pre-dawn mist clinging to the valleys of the Rockies, and feel the thick, humid embrace of a Gulf Coast night. You learn the rhythms of the road, the ebb and flow of traffic, the unwritten rules of the brotherhood of the highway. The West Texas landscape has a beauty all its own. It's a stark, unforgiving beauty, a world of hardy mesquite trees, stubborn patches of scrub brush, and a horizon that stretches into infinity. The sky is a character in itself, a vast, expressive canvas that can shift from a brilliant, cloudless blue to a bruised and angry purple in the blink of an eye, as the sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in fiery strokes of orange and crimson. I rolled down my window and let the warm, dry air whip through the cab. A mournful pedal steel guitar solo from a local country station provided the perfect soundtrack to the fading light. My thoughts drifted to Houston, to the satisfaction of a clean delivery and the simple pleasure of a day or two of stillness. Maybe I'd find a good seafood joint, a welcome change from the greasy spoons and fast food chains that are the staples of a trucker's diet. I was somewhere on that long, lonely stretch between Fort Stockton and Arizona, a place where the world feels stripped down to its bare essentials: earth, sky, and the road. It's in these moments of profound isolation that you get to know yourself. Your thoughts the only company you keep. The truck was running like a dream. I was making good time. And the sunset was one for the books. But the road, as it always does, had a surprise in store for me. And it was just around the next bend. The first hint of trouble was a subtle tremor, a low-frequency vibration that I felt more than heard. I initially dismissed it as a rough patch of asphalt. The relentless Texas sun and the constant pounding of heavy rigs can take their toll on the pavement. But the vibration persisted, growing steadily stronger, until it became a rhythmic thumping that seemed to emanate from the rear of the trailer. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. In my line of work, unfamiliar sounds are rarely a prelude to good news. I eased my foot off the accelerator, my mind racing through a mental checklist of potential culprits. A shifting load, a loose piece of equipment. The thumping grew louder, more insistent. And then, with a deafening bang that sounded like a cannon shot echoing across the desolate landscape, the entire rig jolted violently to the right. I knew, in an instant, what had happened: a blowout, and from the way the truck was fishtailing, it was one of the trailer tires on the passenger side. My heart hammered against my ribs. A blowout on a fully loaded semi is a trucker's nightmare. It can send you careening into oncoming traffic or off the road into the unforgiving desert. I fought the wheel, my knuckles white, every ounce of my being focused on one thing: keeping the massive machine on the road. I managed to wrestle the crippled rig onto the shoulder, the shredded remnants of the tire flapping against the pavement, with a sickening, rhythmic slap. For a long moment, I just sat there, the engine's rumble the only sound in the sudden, unnerving silence. My hands were trembling, a testament to the adrenaline that had surged through my veins. I took a deep, shaky breath and cut the engine. The silence of the desert rushed in to fill the void, broken only by the ticking of the cooling engine and the soft whisper of the wind. I climbed down from the cab, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The last vestiges of sunlight were fading from the sky, and the desert was bathed in a deep, inky blue. I walked to the back of the trailer and aimed my flashlight at the source of the commotion. The tire was a mangled wreck, a chaotic mess of rubber and steel. A quick glance at my spare tire carrier confirmed what my gut already knew. It was empty. A rookie mistake, a lapse in judgment that was about to have serious consequences. I was stranded, in the middle of nowhere. As darkness enveloped the Texas desert, a cold, heavy sense of dread began to settle in my stomach. The desert at night is a different world. The vast, open spaces that feel so liberating under the sun become an oppressive, all-encompassing darkness that swallows light and amplifies every sound. I was alone, truly and utterly alone, with a crippled rig and no means of fixing it. My cell phone, as if on cue, displayed the dreaded no-service message. I was in a digital dead zone, a ghost town on the information superhighway. The adrenaline from the blowout had long since dissipated, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. I was a sitting duck on the side of a major interstate, but out here, in this sparsely populated corner of the world, traffic dwindled to a trickle after dark. I tried to keep busy to stave off the feeling of utter helplessness. I set out my emergency triangles, their reflective surfaces a feeble beacon in the vast darkness. I did a pointless check of the other tires, the simple act of doing something, anything, a small comfort. Back in the cab, the familiar space now felt like a cage. I tried the CB radio, my voice a hopeful plea sent out into the crackling static. Breaker 19. Got a big rig down on the westbound side of I-10-mile marker. I trailed off, unsure of my exact location. Anyone out there? The only reply was the insistent hiss of the radio, a sound that seemed to mock my solitude. The hours crept by, each one stretching into an eternity. I watched as the occasional pair of headlights appeared in the distance, a fleeting spark of hope that was invariably extinguished as the vehicle sped past, its occupants oblivious to my predicament. I thought of my family, of my wife and kids back home. They were accustomed to my long absences, but the thought of them worrying, of not being able to reach me, was a heavy weight on my heart. Sleep was a fleeting, fitful thing punctuated by a whirlwind of what-if scenarios. What if no one stops? What if I'm stranded out here for days? The desert, which had been a place of stark and lonely beauty just a few hours before, now felt menacing, its silence filled with imagined dangers. I must have dozed off at some point, a restless sleep filled with anxious dreams. I was jolted awake by the sound of a vehicle slowing down. My heart leaped into my throat. I peered through the windshield, my eyes struggling to adjust to the darkness. A pair of dim, yellowish headlights was pulling up behind my trailer. It wasn't a police cruiser or a tow truck. It was an old, beat-up pickup truck, the kind that seems to be a permanent fixture in rural Texas. A part of me felt a surge of relief, but another, more cynical part was worry. You hear stories on the road, stories of those who prey on stranded motorists. I watched as a tall, silhouetted figure emerged from the truck. My hand instinctively reached for the tire iron I kept under my seat. I wasn't looking for trouble, but I wasn't about to become a victim either. The figure started walking towards my cab, and I held my breath, waiting to see what the long, dark night had in store for me. The approaching figure resolved into a man tall and lanky, with the slow, deliberate stride of someone who has spent a lifetime under the relentless Texas sun. He wore a cowboy hat and a worn denim jacket, a practical choice in the cool desert night. As he drew closer, I could see a face etched with the fine lines of a life lived outdoors. He didn't look threatening, but the weight of the tire iron in my hand was a small comfort. He stopped a few feet from my driver's side door and looked up at me. "Evening," he said, his voice a low, gravelly drawl. "Looks like you're in a bit of a pickle." "You could say that," I replied, my voice hoarse from a night of disuse. "Blew a tire a few hours ago. No spare." He nodded slowly, his gaze taking in the scene. "Yeah, this ain't the place to be stranded. Cell service is spotty at best out here. He gestured with his thumb back towards his truck. I was just heading home from a friend's place. Saw your triangles. A wave of relief washed over me, so powerful it almost made me dizzy. I appreciate you stopping. Most folks just fly right on by. Well, I ain't most folks, he said with a hint of a smile. The name's Earl. He extended a calloused hand up to me and I shook it. His grip was firm, reassuring. I paused, the old road habit of anonymity kicking in. I'm just a guy in a jam, I said. Earl didn't press. He walked back to the shredded tire, his boots crunching on the gravel. He prodded a piece of the tread with the toe of his boot. Yep, that's a gunner all right. And you said no spare? Yeah, my own damn fault. Forgot to get it replaced after the last time. Earl was quiet for a moment, stroking his chin in thought. Well, there's a little town about 20 miles up the road, Sonora. They got a fella there who runs a tire shop. He's a good man, but he'll be closed up tight for the night. He looked back at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. Tell you what, you look like you could use a hot cup of coffee and a place to sit that ain't the side of the highway. My place ain't far. You can wait there, and in the morning I'll give you a ride into town to see about that tire. The offer was so unexpected, so genuinely kind, that I was momentarily at a loss for words. Here was a complete stranger offering me sanctuary in the middle of the night, with no expectation of anything in return. The cynicism and fear that had been my constant companions for the past several hours began to dissipate, replaced by a profound sense of gratitude. I don't know what to say, I stammered. You don't have to do that. I know I don't, Earl said simply, but my mama raised me better than to leave a man stranded in the desert. Now you grab what you need, and let's get you out of this night air. As I gathered my things, a simple, powerful thought struck me. In a world that so often feels cold and indifferent, here was proof that goodness still existed. And it had found me on a dark, lonely stretch of Texas highway. Earl's ranch was a few miles off the interstate, down a long, dusty dirt road that wound its way into the heart of the desert. The old pickup truck bounced and rattled, its headlights cutting a narrow swath through the darkness. The air was thick with the scent of sagebrush and dry earth, a fragrance that was both foreign and strangely comforting. As we pulled up to a sprawling, single-story ranch house, a pair of dogs came bounding out, their barks a welcoming chorus in the still night. The house was simple and rustic, with a wide, inviting porch and windows that glowed with a warm, yellow light inside. It was a home that was clearly lived in and loved. The furniture was comfortable and well-worn, the walls adorned with family photos and Western art. The air smelled of coffee and wood smoke. Earl's wife, a kind-faced woman with a warm, genuine smile, greeted us at the door. She didn't seem the least bit surprised to find her husband had brought home a stranded trucker in the middle of the night. She just ushered me inside, offered me a cup of coffee, and told me to make myself at home. I spent the rest of the night in a comfortable armchair in their living room, sipping coffee and listening to Earl tell stories of his life as a rancher in West Texas. He spoke of droughts and floods, of good years and lean, of the challenges and rewards of a life lived in harmony with the land. He was a natural storyteller, his words painting vivid pictures of a world that was a universe away from my own. I found myself opening up as well, sharing stories of my life on the road, the places I'd been, the things I'd seen. It was a strange and wonderful thing to be sitting in a stranger's home, sharing stories and finding common ground in our shared humanity. The next morning, after a hearty breakfast of eggs, bacon, and homemade biscuits, Earl drove me into the small town of Sonora. It was a place that time seemed to have overlooked, with a quaint town square and a handful of locally owned businesses. The tire shop was run by a man named Carlos, a friendly, no-nonsense guy who had been in the business for over 30 years. He didn't have the exact tire for my rig in stock, but he assured me he could have one brought in from a larger town by the afternoon. As we waited, Earl gave me a tour of Sonora, pointing out local landmarks and sharing anecdotes about the people Who lived there? It was a tight-knit community, a place where everyone knew everyone else, and people looked out for one another. It was a stark contrast to the anonymity of the highway, the endless procession of faceless cars and trucks. For a few hours I felt like I was a part of something, a member of this small, resilient community. I was no longer just a stranded trucker. I was a guest, a friend. This unexpected detour was becoming much more than just a story about a flat tire. By late afternoon, a dusty pickup truck rolled into Carlos's shop, carrying my new tire. Carlos and his son, a young man about the same age as my own, set to work with an efficiency that spoke of years of practice. As I watched them, a sense of camaraderie washed over me, a shared understanding of the importance of keeping things moving, of getting back on the road. While they worked, Earl and I sat on a bench outside the shop, sipping on cold bottles of soda. We didn't talk much, just watched the quiet rhythms of the small town unfold. An old farmer on a beat-up tractor rumbled by, raising a hand in a silent greeting. A group of kids on bicycles raced past, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air. It was a scene of simple, everyday life, a life I rarely had the chance to witness from the elevated perch of my truck's cab. It was then that I realized this whole ordeal, this unwelcome and unexpected breakdown, had been a blessing in disguise. It had forced me to stop, to step outside of my rolling metal cocoon and connect with the world in a way I hadn't in a long time. It was a potent reminder that the world isn't just a series of highways and truck stops, but a vast and varied landscape filled with people who are, for the most part, just trying to do their best. When the new tire was finally on and everything had been checked and double-checked, I tried to pay Earl for his time and trouble. He would have none of it. "You'd have done the same for me," he said, and I knew he was right. I would have. But to be on the receiving end of such selfless generosity was a humbling experience. As we drove back to my rig, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the desert. It was the same time of day as when my tire had blown, but everything felt different now. The desert no longer seemed menacing. It was beautiful, its starkness a thing of profound wonder. The profound isolation I had felt so acutely the night before had been replaced by a sense of connection, a feeling of being a part of a larger human family. When we reached my truck, I shook Earl's hand, a firm, heartfelt grip that I hoped would convey the depth of my gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "No need to thank me," he said with that same easy smile. "Just pay it forward. That's all the thanks I need." He tipped his hat, climbed back into his old pickup, and drove off, leaving me alone once again on the side of the highway. But I wasn't really alone anymore. I had a story to tell, a memory to cherish, and a renewed faith in the fundamental goodness of people. I climbed back into the cab of my Kenworth, the familiar feel of the seat, and the steering wheel a welcome embrace. I fired up the engine, its deep rumble a reassuring sound in the twilight quiet. After a final walk around to check the new tire, I pulled back onto the highway. I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Earl's old pickup disappearing into the distance. But there was only the long, empty stretch of road behind me. The miles melted away under my wheels, the rhythmic hum of the tires on the pavement a familiar song. But something within me had shifted. I was the same man in the same truck on the same road, but I was seeing the world through a different lens. The landscape outside my windshield no longer felt like a mere backdrop to my journey. It felt alive, brimming with possibilities, populated by people like Earl and his wife, like Carlos and his son. Earl's parting words echoed in my mind, "Just pay it forward," a simple phrase, yet it carried a profound weight. It was a call to action, a reminder that we are all interconnected, that a small act of kindness can ripple outwards in ways we can never fully comprehend. I knew then that this experience would become a part of my story, a story I would share with other drivers at truck stops and diners along the highways of America. A few hours later, I saw a set of hazard lights flashing in the distance. It was a young couple in a small sedan, A flat tire, their unwelcome companion on the dark highway. A year ago, I might have just driven by, assuming they had a cell phone and a spare. But tonight was different. I pulled my rig over to the shoulder, the air brakes hissing in the quiet night. I grabbed my flashlight and a tire iron and walked back to the stranded car. The young man looked up at me, a mixture of fear and relief in his eyes. "Looks like you're in a bit of a pickle," I said. The words a familiar echo of Earl's from the night before. A slow smile spread across my face. The circle was complete. I was no longer just a truck driver. I was a link in a chain of kindness, a chain that stretched across the vast and lonely expanse of the Texas desert. And as I helped the young couple change their tire, I knew that I was a richer man for it. The road had taught me a valuable lesson, one that had nothing to do with miles per gallon or delivery schedules. It had taught me about the human heart, about the power of a helping hand, about the simple, profound truth that we are all just trying to find our way home. And sometimes the best way to get there is to stop and help someone else along the way.